Europe, a continent of cathedrals and symphonies, economies and industries, the home of Greco-Christian culture, of unity in diversity.
This is at least a partial picture of a Europe. The continent with the most painters, philosophers, but also Nobel laureates, physics, chemists, mathematicians. People who have risen above the ordinary and made an immeasurable contribution to the people, to Europe and the world in the field of interest. It was the creative energy of a perfect blend of advanced and the traditional.
However, Europe has also been the arena of 2 world wars, the reaction to which was the creation of the European Union. But the hopes associated with that union are not being fulfilled.
Viele von uns waren begeisterte Europäer, weil wir meinten, die EU sei für Frieden in Europa und würde vor allem die 4 großen Freiheiten: freier Personenverkehr, freier Warenverkehr, freier Dienstleistungsverkehr und freier Geldverkehr stützen.
When Europe was united, we all felt that spirit of unity, warmth, cooperation, and we all felt that it was the path we should take. That Europe has finally found a path that will overcome discussions, diversions, and arise on the basis of unity, the same values, the same culture. Today, however, it's a Europe of division, selflessness, migrants, some other important values, but different. More than ever, the picture of abducted Europe describes the struggle that will take place on European soil, European reality.
Die EU unterstützt die grenzenlose Immigration von Menschen, die nicht mit der Dankbarkeit von Gästen unsere Länder bereichern, sondern im Gegenteil unsere demokratischen Systeme zerstören wollen.
The strength of Europe lies in shared values, but also in the uniqueness of and historic competition between its nations.
Our similar experiences, history and struggles, even the ones against one another, join us, because all of them show that together, in alliance with each other, are we strong.
This awareness goes back to the personality of the 10th century Bishop of Prague, St. Adalberti, Wojciech, who conveyed to the Central European nations the ideal of an alliance of Christian countries, a Pax Christiana.
Díky jeho působení na císaře, na ty špičky svaté říše římské, se ujala myšlenka, že kontakt, že ten vztah mezi prostorem středoevropským a tím prostorem západoevropským, který pro nás ve střední Evropě tehdy představovala svatá říše římská, že tento vztah nebude vztahem, který by se opíral o centralizaci, včlenění, uniformizaci, ale je založen na svébytnosti národních království.
The current rejection of national characteristics, as well as ideological dictates originating from the center, are suffocating this Europe.
Brussels is a place where power is becoming more and more concentrated in the hands of unelected elites. This is not a good thing. This is not a good thing. And it's very remote from the rest of Europe. Citizens in Zagreb, citizens in Prague, Budapest, Warsaw, many ordinary people have no idea what these European bodies are doing. But we can see what their ideology is, this secularist.
In reality, we need cooperation that enhances the strength of nation-states.
Gab es im 19. Jahrhundert noch Metternich und Bismarck, die den Kontinent beherrschten, ist es heute der Moloch Brüssel, der wie der Krake alles regulieren will und beeinflussen. Man möge mir ersparen, die einzelnen, teilweise kriminellen und korrupten Erscheinungen, die von Brüssel ausgehen, näher zu definieren. Fakt ist, dass ein großer Teil des Westens Europas, vor allem Deutschland und Frankreich, alles das, was Nation, Heimat, Christentum betrifft, negiert, um stattdessen ein schwammiges Gebilde supranationaler Einflussmöglichkeiten zu schaffen.
If we read the history of the collapse of great civilizations, extinct empires, and tradition, we immediately see the similarity with the barely living cities of Europe without a compass, without Santa Claus, Christmas, or Easter. Everything becomes something in medium, vague, unknown.
Christentum ist kein wichtiges Element in Europa mehr. Stattdessen beschäftigt man sich mit dem unsäglichen Genderismus, mit LGBTQ als Staatsziel und mit einer breiten Toleranz gegenüber jenen Immigranten, deren Identität vor allem der Koran weniger gottesbezogen als vielmehr als politisches System von der Scharia bis zur Aggression gegen alles, was christlich, traditionell, ja schlechthin gegen die Seele unserer mitteleuropäischen Länder gerichtet ist.
People in the countries that experience life behind the Iron Curtain perceive interventions in civil liberties and the promotion of an ultra-liberal agenda as detrimental.
Not all is money, and not all is about competitive achievements. We have this common sensitivity against ideologies which appear to be benevolent but have a sinister aim. We must defend the traditional family and push back against any attempt to deprive our nations of their individual sovereignty in the name of some global vision of a man created in the image of some elite class. The first task toward a closer unity of the nations of Central and Eastern Europe is defending our common freedom, including the rights of parents and the traditional family.
Relations between states must be based on common interests, have clear limits and content, and abandon any ideological project of a Babylonian Tower of the New World Order as promoted by the Western European elites. This is why cooperation between the Central European countries is important.
We need a counterweight to the Franco-German axis. We need a counterweight in Central Europe. We need a Central Europe that can say no.
Because the heart of Europe experienced everything which was possible to be experienced. Moreover, we have got experiences which are missing from the history of our Western friends. These common experiences have made us careful and have taught us that only persisting in certain values can ensure survival, moving forward, and making peace. The peoples of Central Europe never constituted a great power. What is more, they form an empire only together. Therefore, we lack arrogance, but are humble enough to work hard and are courageous enough to protect ourselves, if necessary.
Central Europe. It is a space defined by the rivers Elbe, Vistula and the Danube, by the Baltic, Adriatic and Black Seas, and by the mountain ranges of the Alps and Carpathians.
Now, the strategic characteristic of this cultural community should be spiritual, mental capital, multiplicity, diversity, polycentricity, pluralism, tolerance. In a way, a characteristic once, I hope I shall not offend anyone, once wittily attributed to Austria-Hungary, namely Gemütlichkeit und Schlamperei.
None of these countries had colonies and bear no guilt for poverty in Africa or Asia, yet the Brussels dictators require them to be open to massive immigration.
Let me remind you here of the migration risk that is putting Europe under pressure. The message is that Europe's population, inhabitants, children are interchangeable. Because they are no longer valuable, because they are in the way. Because if we don't replace the native European peoples, if we don't dilute Europe, then Europe is capable of showing immunity. I kindly ask you to understand my words well. I'm not speaking against somebody's, but for somebody's. For us, for Europe. In Hungary, we have a wonderful song called All Europe. It expresses our childlike love and our sincere concern for the old continent at the same time. It is this anxious love which is behind my thoughts. The good news is that the adversary may be faceless, but his work is recognizable.
The forces steering Europe towards general chaos are difficult to name.
Náš protivník nemá meno. Protivníka som nazval progresivizmom, ale iní to nazývajú radšej ľavicovým liberalizmom. Iní zase kultúrnym marxizmom. Najnovšie sa objavil názov wokeizmus. Kto má veľa mien, ako keby nemal žiadne. Komunisti mali svoje meno, tým boli viditeľní. My však zápasíme s protivníkom bez mena, čo nám sťažuje mobilizáciu proti nemu.
Besides endless immigration, the nameless adversary imposes other destructive agendas.
Metódou progresivizmu je ovládnutie inštitúcií. Ide o inštitúcie ako médiá, školstvo, umenie, ovplyvňujúce kultúru v najširšom slova zmysle, teda spôsob, ako ľudia žijú svoje životy. Ak sa vydarí trpezlivý gramsciovský pochod inštitúciami, spoločnosť zmení svoje hodnoty na opak pôvodných hodnot a neskôr sa dostavia aj politické víťazstvá v parlamente a vláde.
The new threats can only be countered by the united forces of Central Europe. The countries here once belonged to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which failed, however, to fulfill its unifying role. Most authors, starting with Milan Kundera, see the fragmentation of this area as the cause of its vulnerability.
The area was defined as sandwiched between Russia and Germany, or as a grain of sand thrown into the gears of the political machinations of the great powers, whose interference created a plethora of weak political entities whose fates are decided in foreign capitals. That was a quotation.
The Central European region, overlooked by the West, is, however, the core and foundation of Europe.
We remember our roots, and our history has taught us their importance. We have learned that these roots, or with other words, values, cannot be replaced. Since everything that today Central Europe, today Europe is, has developed from this. Accordingly, being Central European means commitment. Commitment to Europe, to the real Europe. Commitment to a Europe which remembers its values, tying it together, remembers its history and is able to learn from that.
The Central European countries also served as Europe's shield, halting aggressions and their economic impacts. As early as the 9th century, they stopped the Avar raids, and in the 13th, they repelled the Mongol invasion.
The third thing is resistance against Ottoman Empire, resistance which lasted for a couple of centuries, with Battle of Vienna, 1683, but in fact with hundreds of battles.
In the wider region of Central Europe, cooperating independent states have functioned together.
Ten model autonomních království někdy fungoval, někdy ne. Řada z nich na staletí zanikla, jako naše. Poláci také mají velmi pohnutou historii objevování a ztrácení vlastní státnosti. To patří k tomu středoevropskému prostoru, ale ten model zůstává. Zůstává jako standard, k němuž se nějak vymezujeme a který je vlastně stále aktuální. A na pozadí tohoto modelu naší autonomie, středoevropské autonomie, která je současně zapuštěna do kontaktů s Evropou, se světem. Na tomto pozadí si klademe otázky po budoucnosti středoevropské spolupráce.
The vision of a cooperative Central Europe presents a unit of 140 million inhabitants, with a scale of economy enabling a high degree of strategic autonomy.
Tato geopolitická perspektiva by samozřejmě byla naprosto prázdná, pokud by neměla hodnotovou dimenzi, protože hodnoty představují to mentální pojivo středoevropanství.
The logical question is not whether to proceed together, but when and in what form.
Aus der EU auszutreten wäre aufgrund vieler rechtlicher und finanzieller Erwägungen derzeit wohl nicht der richtige Weg, so reizvoll er für viele wäre. Nein, wir müssen innerhalb der EU eine stark vernetzte Gruppe mitteleuropäischer Länder bilden, die gegen das Dominat von Frankreich Deutschlands, denn Deutschland ist inzwischen ein politisch failed state geworden, in der EU vertreten ist.
The seat of this Central European community could be a small town like Visegrad, and the legal basis an international treaty that would define the areas of joint competence. Everything possible would be managed at the national level, including currency and armies.
Wir arbeiten schon seit längerer Zeit an diesem Projekt, aber es ist unendlich schwer umzusetzen. Was nicht heißt, dass man nicht alles versuchen muss, dieses doch zu tun.
The powerful pillars of Central Europe's architecture are its shared values and mutual security.
Ale neměli bychom zapomínat ani na ten třetí pilíř, ten pilíř ekonomický, protože ani ten prostor, strategický prostor, ani ty hodnoty nemohou existovat ve vzduchoprázdnu, které by bylo bez té praktické spolupráce. Pokud ty hodnoty jsou pojivem mentálním, duchovním, tak ekonomika, infrastruktura představuje pojivo praktické. Bez něhož samozřejmě žádný projekt středoevropské spolupráce nemá šanci na úspěch.
This Central European economic and intellectual space could stretch from the Baltic to the Adriatic and possibly to the Black Sea.
Myslím, že když takto začneme chápat střední Evropu, uvědomujeme si, kdo do střední Evropy patří a kdo do ní nepatří. Tak jako nemůžeme určit hranici mezi Evropou a Ázií, nemůžeme plně, bych řekl, určit hranici, kde je a kde není střední Evropa. Já jsem použil toho výrazu domov.
The values on which these countries once established their existence still have a lasting value.
We have a common history, we have similar languages, we have suffered under totalitarianism, and we are neighbors. The Christian command of love your neighbor as yourself applies to individuals, but also to nations.
Today, all European nations face the combined attack of both ideology and bureaucracy.
But here people gather around on a common idea that ignite the spark that can preserve the traditional values of a healthy nationalism, protection of language, culture, and all with the absolute protection of all minorities. Our common interest would be greater than our differences, but we must also respect those differences. But if there is a spark here, then let them make a fire together with old faith and a new enthusiasm.
By uniting the forces of Central European nation-states, their living space would no longer be a borderland, periphery, or Trojan horse for non-European actors, but a strong player and a true hope for Europe.